There's a specific kind of silence that settles over a building after midnight, the kind where the air itself feels heavy, where every vent rattle sounds like a footstep, and every shadow in the corner of your eye seems to breathe. Night shift security guards are the ones who walk that silence, alone, armed with nothing but a flashlight and a set of keys. And sometimes they discover that the building they're supposed to protect is already occupied by something that doesn't care about locks. Tonight we're settling into the watchman's chair with 5 true horror stories from the overnight patrol. Hit that like, subscribe if you dare, and remember, the camera feed might be clearer than you think. DeMarcus Thibodeau, a 44-year-old security guard at the sprawling Briarwood Corporate Center in Atlanta, Georgia, had worked the night shift for 11 years without incident, beyond the occasional false alarm in a raccoon that once tripped a motion sensor in the cafeteria. And his routine was as steady as the building's climate control system. Clock in at 10 p.m., do a perimeter walk, settle into the monitoring room, and watch the 16 camera feeds, cycle through empty cubicle farms and deserted parking structures. And the one thing that made the Briarwood job different from any other corporate security gig he'd ever worked was the statue, a massive bronze piece that stood in the central atrium, a commissioned sculpture of the company's founder. A stern old white man in a 3-piece suit holding a ledger, his eyes cast downward as if judging the tiles. And DeMarcus had passed that statue 1,000 times, nodded to it. Even joked to his day shift counterpart that Old Man Briarwood was the best employee in the building because he never moved. But on a humid night in late September, sitting in the monitor room with a cup of gas station coffee and a paperback, he glanced up at the screen for camera 7, the atrium cam. And something was wrong. The statue wasn't there. The pedestal was empty, and for a long, disbelieving second, he thought the camera had glitched or someone had stolen the damn thing. And he pulled up the feed on the larger monitor and rewound. And his blood turned to cold sludge as he watched the statue shift, its bronze limbs moving with a slow, grinding deliberation, the figure stepping off the pedestal and walking out of frame. And DeMarcus grabbed his flashlight and his radio and told the dispatch center he had a possible intruder in the atrium, and the dispatcher said copy. But we're not showing any motion alarms, and he walked through the dark corridors toward the atrium. The building was silent, the air conditioning humming its usual monotone. Wanted one here. And when he pushed open the glass doors to the atrium, he saw the pedestal was indeed empty, and he heard a sound, a metallic scraping, coming from the north hallway, and he followed it. His flashlight shaking, and around the corner, in the long corridor lined with conference rooms, the statue was standing, but its posture was different now. Its head was raised, its bronze eyes somehow fixed on him, and its mouth, which had been a stern closed line, was open. A dark cavity that hadn't been sculpted, and from that cavity came a voice, a deep, resonant toll like a bell submerged in oil, saying, "DeMarcus, you've watched me for 11 years, but I've watched you longer. I was here before the building, before the corporation, before the city. I was buried in the red clay, and they dug me up and melted me into this form. But I remember the fields and the rivers and the blood and the soil. And tonight I'm going to walk, and you're going to walk with me. We're going to find the men who put me here, and we're going to remind them what the ground owes." And DeMarcus took a step back, and the statue took a step forward, its bronze feet cracking the floor tiles. And its arm reached out, the fingers opening and closing. DeMarcus turned and ran, not toward the exit, but toward the fire suppression panel. A wild idea sparking in his mind, and he pulled the manual alarm, and the sprinklers erupted, and the statue caught in the torrent of cold water. began to seize, the bronze contracting and cracking. The voice rising into a shriek that shattered 3 windows, and by the time the fire department arrived, the statue was back on its pedestal, but its expression had changed. The stern judgment replaced by a wide, hungry smile, and the company had it removed the next week and melted down. But DeMarcus knows it's not gone, 'cause sometimes he still hears that deep tolling voice on the wind and wherever they poured the new bronze. Something of the old red clay is still remembering, still walking, still watching for the night guard who knows its name. Janine Coulter, a 37-year-old security guard at the historic Fairweather Hotel in downtown St. Louis, Missouri, had heard all the ghost stories from the day shift bellhops. Tales of a Prohibition-era gangster who died in room 303 and a woman in white who supposedly walked the mezzanine. But Janine was a pragmatist who'd worked security at hospitals and malls and never seen anything that couldn't be explained by bad wiring or too many energy drinks. And the Fairweather job was cushy, all marble floors and crystal chandeliers and a nice warm booth in the lobby where she could watch the cameras. But the one part of the hotel she hated was the basement. A sprawling sublevel of boiler rooms, laundry tunnels, and old storage closets that still had the original 1920s tile, and a smell that she could only describe as old grief and the hotel manager. A nervous man named Mr. Pendleton told her she never had to patrol the basement except once a night to check the boiler pressure. And she did that check every night at 2 a.m. A quick walk down the narrow stairs, a glance at the gauges, and back up, till the night she heard the singing, a faint, tuneful humming coming from behind a heavy steel door she'd never opened, because it was marked condemned no entry. And she stood there, her flashlight trained on the door. And the singing was a child's song, Ring Around the Rosie, and there were 2 voices, high and sweet and slightly out of key, and she should have walked away. She should have called it in. But her body moved without her permission, and she tried the handle, and the door swung open into a long, dark room that wasn't on any blueprint she'd seen. A room lined with small iron beds, a dozen of them, and on those beds were shapes, small and still. And the singing stopped, and a voice, a little girl's voice, said from the darkness, "Are you the new nanny?" The old nanny got sick and went away, and we've been waiting. We've been so cold. The furnace doesn't work, and the blankets are thin. Can you light the fire, Miss Janine? Can you stay with us? And Janine's flashlight swept the room, and the beds were empty, just rumpled sheets and flat pillows. But the singing started again, and this time it was coming from right behind her. And she spun, and the door slammed shut, and she was in darkness. And small hands, cold and dry as paper, slipped into her hand. And the voice said, "We can't leave. The man in room 34 put us here in 1928. He said we were his special guests, and we've been his special guests ever since. And now you're a special guest too, Miss Janine. You checked in when you opened the door, and the hotel never lets its special guests check out." And Janine screamed and wrenched her hand free, and slammed her body against the door until it burst open. She scrambled up the stairs and into the lobby, and the cameras had recorded nothing, just her walking down the basement stairs and walking back up. But on the footage she was gone for 4 hours, and her hair had streaks of gray she hadn't had before, and she quit the next day. But every night at 2 a.m., no matter where she is, she hears faint singing, and she feels small, cold hands trying to find hers in the dark. And she knows the hotel is still waiting for her to return and tuck the children in for the long, long night. Roberto Iglesias, a 31-year-old security guard at the Galleria Vertica, a 60-story mixed-use tower in Dallas, Texas, had one of those buildings that never truly slept, with a few floors of offices, some luxury condos, and a ground-level retail plaza that closed at 9 p.m., but his shift was on the office floors. 30 through 45, a quiet stretch of cubicles and corner suites, and his main job was to sit at the security desk on the 35th floor and monitor the cameras and occasionally walk around. And the building's elevators were the latest model. Sleek and fast and controlled by a keycard system. And he'd never had a problem with them until a Tuesday night in early December when the service elevator at the end of the hall, the one that was supposed to be locked and out of commission for maintenance, pinged and the doors slid open and a wave of cold air washed out. Air that smelled like wet stone and old rust. And Roberto looked up from his phone and saw that the elevator car was dark, the interior light dead, and the panel inside showed a single button lit. The B button for basement, but the building only had 3 basement levels, and the light was a deep, angry red. And he should have called maintenance. He should have walked away. But instead, he stepped inside, his flashlight on. And the doors closed, and the elevator began to descend, and it passed B1, B2, B3, and kept going. The floor numbers turning into symbols he didn't recognize. The voice that came over the intercom wasn't the automated going down announcement, but a man's voice, hoarse and wet, saying, "Roberto, thank you for taking the late shift. We don't get many visitors down here. The basement staff is so small. We've been looking for a new hire, and you've just walked right in for your interview." And the elevator stopped, and the doors opened. And instead of a parking garage or a boiler room, Roberto was looking into a vast, dimly lit chamber that stretched far beyond where the building's footprint should have been, a space filled with rows of desks, ancient wooden desks. And at each desk sat a figure, a person, or something that used to be a person, their skin gray and papery, their eyes sewn shut with heavy black thread, and they were all typing on typewriters. Old manual typewriters, and the sound was a clattering roar, and the voice said, "These are the records. Roberto, every deal made in the building, every bribe, every betrayal, every soul that was sold in the suites above, all typed up and filed. And we need someone to read the records back to us, to speak the words aloud so the building remembers, so the concrete is satisfied, and you've been chosen. You came down. And now you'll sit at the empty desk in the corner, and you'll read until your voice gives out. And then you'll type, and then you'll sew your own eyes shut and join the staff." And Roberto backed into the elevator. But the doors wouldn't close, and one of the figures stood up, its head swiveling toward him, its sewn eyes somehow seeing him, and it opened its mouth, and a flood of words poured out. Names, dates, amounts, sins. And the weight of the words pressed against him, and he fell to his knees, and he did the only thing he could think of. He jammed the emergency stop button and pulled the fire alarm, and the sprinklers erupted, and the figures screamed. Sound like 1,000 typewriters jamming at once, and the elevator doors slammed shut, and the car shot upward. And he stumbled out onto the 35th floor, soaking wet, and the building was evacuated. And no one found any flooding, no one found any basement beyond B3. But Roberto's keycard log shows that the service elevator went to a sub-level that doesn't exist, and he quit and moved to a different state. But sometimes when he's in an elevator alone, the car shudders and the floor numbers change into symbols, and a hoarse voice says, "We're still filing, Roberto, and your desk is still empty." Misty Longchase. 28-year-old security guard at the sprawling Apex Logistics Distribution Center outside Reno, Nevada, worked the 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. shift, patrolling 1 million square feet of shelving units, conveyor belts, and pallet racks that were organized in a grid so rigid that every aisle had a number and every bin had a barcode. And the job was mind-numbingly monotonous, except for one thing. The warehouse had a glitch, a quirk that the other guards whispered about, a tendency for the aisles to shift, rearrange themselves after midnight, so that the route you walked in on didn't match the route you walked out on. And Misty had laughed it off as newbie hazing until the night she was doing her 1 a.m. round, and turned down aisle 14B to find that it ended in a wall of cardboard boxes, a dead end that hadn't been there on her last round. And she turned around, and the aisle behind her had changed. The numbers on the end caps now reading 47G, a section that should have been on the other side of the building. And she pulled out her radio and called the front desk, but the radio only emitted a low, rhythmic hum, like a heartbeat, and the overhead lights flickered and went to a dim, amber emergency mode. And the warehouse was no longer silent. There were sounds, the creak of shelving units shifting, the rustle of boxes being moved, and a voice, a low, grinding voice that seemed to come from the building's speakers, said, "Misty, you've been a good guard. You don't cut corners. You don't sleep on shift. You respect the warehouse, and the warehouse respects you. But tonight we need your help. There's a box in aisle 99 that shouldn't be there. A box that was shipped from a place that doesn't exist. And it's been poisoning the grid, making the shelves bleed, and we can't reach it. Or just the layout, the bones. We need hands. We need your hands. Go to aisle 99 and find the box and open it and let out what's inside, and we'll let you leave. We'll put the aisles back. We'll give you the shortest route to the exit." And Misty, against every survival instinct, followed the voice, because the alternative was wandering a shifting labyrinth until her shift ended and the day crew found her missing. And she walked, and the shelves parted for her, creating a path that led to a single aisle, unmarked, at the far edge of the building. And on a low shelf sat a small wooden crate, old and damp, with no barcode, no shipping label, just a symbol carved into the lid. A circle with a slash, and she pried it open with her flashlight, and inside, nestled in packing straw, was a mirror. An old hand mirror with a tarnished silver frame. And when she looked into it, she saw not her own reflection, but the reflection of the warehouse. But with all the shelves rearranged into a pattern, a huge spiral that turned inward, and at the center of the spiral was a door she'd never seen, and the voice said, "You found it, now you can leave. But you're part of the layout now. You'll always find the shortest route home, and you'll always know where things belong." And she put the mirror in her pocket and walked out. The aisle's perfectly straight, and she finished her shift, and she still works at Apex. But sometimes, when she touches a shelf, she can feel the building's pulse. She knows the warehouse is alive, and it's grateful. And one day, it will ask for another favor, and she'll have to go back to aisle 99 and open the next box. Owen Strickland, a 52-year-old security guard at the Meridian Financial Tower in Minneapolis, Minnesota, had been a cop for 20 years before he retired and took the quiet building security job. And he'd seen every kind of human darkness there was. But the Meridian Tower was supposed to be a peaceful end to his career. A 40-story glass and steel building that was empty after 7 p.m., except for the cleaning crew that left at midnight. And his job was to sit in the marble lobby at a big curved desk and monitor the cameras and occasionally walk the floors, and the only thing that ever bothered him was the lobby intercom. An old brass-faced speaker that crackled sometimes with residual static from the day shift's pages. But on a snowy January night around 3:15 a.m., the intercom clicked on, and a voice, calm and professional, said, "Owen Strickland, please report to the lobby information desk. You have a visitor." And he looked around the empty lobby. The glass doors locked, the snow falling silently outside, and he pressed the intercom button and said, "This is Strickland. Who's paging me?" And there was no answer. Just a soft click, and then the intercom came back and the voice said, "Your visitor is waiting, Owen. She's been waiting a long time. She says her name is Lily, and she's wearing a red coat." And Owen's blood went cold because Lily was his daughter. His daughter who had died in a car accident on an icy road 20 years ago. And she had been wearing a red coat the night they pulled her from the wreck. And he stood up, his hands shaking, and he looked at the cameras and on the feed for the main entrance. There was a figure, a small figure in a red coat, standing outside the glass doors in the swirling snow, her face upturned, and he walked to the doors, and there was no one there. The sidewalk empty, the snow pristine, but when he turned back to his desk, the intercom clicked, and Lily's voice, her exact voice, the one he heard in his dreams every night, said, "Daddy, I'm inside now. I'm in the elevator. Come find me. I'm going to the top floor. I want to see the city lights." And he watched the elevator indicator light up. Floor by floor climbing, and he got into the other elevator and followed. And when the doors opened on the top floor, the observation level, the room was empty, but the windows were fogged, and on one of them, written in a child's hand, were the words, "I miss you, Daddy, but I'm not alone here. The building is full of people like me. People who died on the roads, people who died in the offices, people who jumped from the roof, and they all want to meet you. They all want to tell you their stories. You're the best cop we've ever had, and tonight you're going to listen." And then the intercom on the 40th floor crackled. A chorus of voices, dozens of them, began to speak, their words overlapping into a roar of grief and rage and loneliness, and Owen fell to his knees, tears streaming. He listened, and he didn't leave until the sun came up, and when the day shift arrived, they found him sitting on the observation deck, his eyes empty. He never spoke again except to say, "They just needed someone to hear them. I'm still listening. I'll always be listening." And he still works at the Meridian Tower, and every night at 3:15 a.m., the intercom clicks on. Lily's voice says, "Thank you for listening, Daddy. We'll see you soon." And Owen smiles and waits. 5 night shift security guards, 5 buildings that were supposed to be empty, and 5 encounters that shattered the boundary between the living and whatever else walks the dark. If you've ever worked a late shift alone, you know that the quiet can be louder than any alarm. And the shadows have a way of breeding stories that you'll never put in the official logbook. From a statue that remembered the blood in the soil to a little girl's voice on an intercom. These accounts remind us that a security badge can't protect you from everything. I want to hear from you. Have you ever worked the night shift and seen something that still keeps you up? Drop your story in the comments. This community is built on shared fear, and every experience adds another layer to the dark. If you felt the weight of these stories, hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell. We're here every week bringing you true terror from the people who lived it. Stay safe, keep your flashlight charged, and never answer a page that knows your daughter's name.